as long as I know, even since I was born and raised up in the pastor family. My father devoted his life serving God and to the people who live in remote areas of jungles. Serving and wanting to help was my way of showing love. When God called me to devote my life to the children of Cameron orphans.
1967. Patrick Beckham arrives at the base in Cam Ranh Bay and begins mounting support for a Christian orphanage. With the help of a Baptist missionary and former Buckner Boys Ranch resident Jim Gale, they identified Nguyen Xuân Ha as a director.
Years ago, when I was in the military, I was instrumental in suggesting that we might start a Christian orphanage. My friend from Baylor was studying to be a missionary, Jim Gale, and he was up in Dalat in the hill country in language school. So I got in touch with Jim and I asked him if he knew of some Vietnamese Christian person who would be interested in running an orphanage. And he said, well, I think I might. After I left, Mr. Ha came back and they started building some buildings, and then before long they started taking in orphans.
1969. Cam Ranh City Christian Orphanage opens.
My husband, Ha Su Nguyen, was the director of the Cam Ranh Orphanage. He's played a vital role. As his wife, I support him. Being a school teacher, I love teaching and being around the children. So my heart led me to be a part of this wonderful life.
Our father died in the war, and so she had moved us closer to Cam Ranh. And then she was able to find the orphanage, and I don't know how she decided how she picked four of us to put in there in the orphanage, but we had a large family and she couldn't feed us all, so she picked four of us and to be in the orphanage, be taken care of.
I did not know the orphanage, but one day I saw that the bus they load a lot of children, and the children pass out the clothes for the other people, and I'm asking, what are these people doing? They say, oh, that is orphanage, Cam Ranh orphanage. Often they pass out the gift for all the children and the clothes, whoever needed.
We were very, very much into the daily lives and the daily routines and everything there. We felt very comfortable growing up in that environment that we know that our family could not provide at that time. We were able to get our education, 3 meals a day, and a great environment for young kids to be in.
1972. The U.S. military pulled out of Cam Ranh, sending the entire area into economic distress. The orphanage felt the effects of the withdrawal immediately. The decision was made to abandon the orphanage. The city nearest to Cam Ranh had just fallen, and Ko Zun knew now was the time to flee. The 69 orphans, along with 13 workers and their 13 children, loaded onto the 3 buses and began what would become a 3-month journey.
At the end of March, the war became very hard. The government decided to withdraw from our highland cities like Ban Ma Thuột, Pleiku, and Kon Tum. It created confusion among the population. In this situation, we have to plan, and we decided we abandon everything except that we sow for each child 1 sack, and we fill it with rice because we don't know, we may just go out and this child will get lost somewhere.
In April 2nd, 1975, with the South Vietnamese military getting routed and refugees streaming south, the group leaves the orphanage in 3 buses.
During that time, he planned how to move the children out of the Cam Ranh. Ko Xuân waiting for the news from the Thai Ha in Saigon, but did not get any contact. So she go ahead and charged 3 buses, evacuation all the children from Cam Ranh to Saigon. We finally get in touch with Thai Ha in Saigon that we are moving, coming to Saigon.
In 1975, 69 children from the Cam Ranh City Christian Orphanage, accompanied by the staff and their kids, escaped their troubled homeland and made it all the way to Buckner Children's Home in Dallas, Texas.
In time when we left the country that night, we didn't plan to come to the United States. We were just planning to go to a small island, Kamau Island, down the south, and stay there until the war was over. But once we were out in the water that night, we heard the country fell. It was overrun by communists. That was April 30th, 1975. And so while we were out there, the director, wanted us to go to a safer place, to Singapore.
May 1st, 1975. After only 2 days at sea, their engine gave out, and the orphans find themselves adrift. They saw a Taiwanese merchant ship and asked for help. The captain of the boat refused and left them. The group was now stranded, and all they had left was their hope and their faith. As all hope seemed lost, a Taiwanese merchant ship came back and towed them to Malaysia. From there, they met a fishing boat that would later tow them to Singapore.
There was a fellow who had been a pastor in Houston, and he had been appointed, I think he'd been appointed for Vietnam, but of course things were falling and he couldn't get into Vietnam, so he was in Singapore. And he contacted his church in Houston and said, hey, we need sponsors for these people. So they said, well, we'll sponsor them all.
It was a great surprise when the plane with the orphans arrived after having gone halfway around the world, and arrived at Fort Chaffee, and they opened the door, and here was Chaplain Jim Gale, who'd been their pastor over there. And it was kind of like a homecoming.
When we came to United States from Singapore, the first one we saw Mr. Gale, Mr. Jim Gale, and we saw him and we so happy, and we cried and this is a miracle. We don't believe that we saw somebody, and we like a family.
But at the juncture of them arriving at Fort Chaffee, the base commander said, we don't have any facilities for children here. So Jim Gale got in touch with Buckner's Orphaned Home, and they said, well, in about a month, we'll be able to take them all here as a group. So Jim Gale called the church in Houston and said, we've got these orphans at Fort Chaffee, but they can't take them at Buckner's for a month. So the church in Houston, the Memorial Drive Baptist Church that sponsored all of them, said, well, we have a member who has a ranch that we use for church camp and things, and got kind of dormitory-like facilities, and they can come there for a month. So they went to Houston, and after everybody got there, all of their, I don't know, whatever, medical clearance and everything straightened out, they were then able to get on a couple of buses and go to Dallas.
Last month, David Dick reported on the arrival at a Texas ranch of a group of Vietnamese orphans, and he was on hand when it was time for them to leave their first but temporary home in America.
The last night at the Touch Ranch was a time to go down to the lake to watch the sunset. A time to gather around the piano and sing with Mrs. Paul Martin, who with her husband owns this property and made it available to the orphans. It was a time for prayer. And the next morning, less than 3 weeks after they arrived, it was time to pack up again and move on. The director of the Cam Ranh City Christian Orphanage, Mr. High, had made arrangements for the children to be transferred to a more permanent facility. Life had been pleasant at the ranch, and the children were leaving reluctantly. After a 250-mile chartered bus ride through the Texas countryside, the 69 South Vietnamese orphans arrived at the Buckner Children's Home in Dallas, a large facility affiliated with the Texas Baptist Convention. Most of the other children who live here, more than 300, are not orphans. They've been sent here by children's agencies and the courts. An estimated 1,000 persons have expressed a desire to adopt these South Vietnamese orphans. Nonetheless, they will undergo lengthy processing at Buckner, a licensed adopting agency.
The first day when I got there, I didn't see him. I mean, for a few minutes, I didn't see him because the kids just mobbed me that day, and I couldn't see him. I didn't know if he was there or not, but then in a little while, I finally saw him. And I knew that everything was going to be all right because he was there.
Once we were in at Buckner, we didn't know a lick of English. You know, our first summer here was just taking English classes and just trying to assimilate with the other kids in Buckner. So what they did was they pair us, you know, by age. They try to find a little a friend from that has already been an American friend at Buckner.
I'm very thankful to be where I am now, just because of the opportunities that have been afforded to me to be loved, to be educated, to be given opportunities for success in this country. But I certainly don't take it for granted. I've learned from my dad and from Kohai and just being raised in the orphanage that we were loved and that we should love other people.
But now we in United States, and that is a God purpose for our life. And when we look back and we think about, you know, we should do something for the children in Vietnam. And so when after we left Vietnam, we went back to U.S. and we start a foundation. Is the Cam Ranh Orphans. And with the Cam Ranh Orphans, the logo is get love and share love. We all receive the love from other people, and now we need to share the love to other people.
Not a day goes by that I don't thank the Lord for His help. Without His guidance, Cam Ranh Orphanage, and I won't be sitting here today. I strongly believe in the Lord and His grace. Get love and share love.
Help and intervention from the time that they left Cameron Bay until the time they got on American soil at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. It is a tremendous, fantastic story of God's grace to all these children. God caring for the orphans, and this story provides. And all that's happened since is a real indication of God at work and in the lives of these orphans, continuing in the lives of these orphans. I'm so thankful that God let me have a little bit of part in that, and to be able to say, what an awesome God we have. What a mighty God we have. What a God with plans and purposes that are far beyond our ability to understand and see. How great is our God.